Hi, everyone. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Share the Load, hosted by myself, Mia Schachter, and engineered by my pal, Pete Ziarto.
That's me. Hi, Mia.
Hi, Pete.
Can you tell listeners what Share the Load is all about?
Share the Load is about the division of labor in relationships. So that's all kinds of labor, like emotional labor, domestic, financial, and other kinds of labor, and all of your relationships. So your friendships, your family, your coworkers, and your romantic relationships.
Sounds like you put a lot of effort into it, and that's a lot of good info for everybody to listen to. So they should check it out and go to patreon.com/share the load. And I hear there are multiple subscriber levels of support.
That's right. There are several subscriber levels. The $10 level, for example, includes a shout out to your own product, show, or offering on the next 2 episodes, and 1 monthly 10-minute over-the-phone boundary guidance session with me.
And to see the rest of the tiers that Mia talks about, check out patreon.com/share the load. And how else can the listeners support the show, Mia?
Listeners can write a review on Apple Podcasts, post about it on social media, and share it with friends.
Very cool. Well, let's start the show. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for listening. I'm your host, Mia Schachter. I'm an intimacy coordinator for film, TV, and theater, and a writer and educator in Los Angeles. Today I'm talking to Jenette Goldstein, who's a well-known character actress from Aliens, Terminator 2, Titanic, and also the co-founder and CEO of Jenette Bras, a small chain of bra-fitting boutiques where the alphabet starts at D. She's a mother of 4 children and is presently hunkered down in Atlanta with her husband. Hey, Jeanette, how are you?
I'm good. How you doing, Mia?
Good, pretty good. I found out about you because my mom and my sister love your bras.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and my mom has been getting your email newsletter, and she forwarded it to me and said that she thought you would probably have some unique thoughts and ideas about labor and sharing the burden. So I'm so glad that this worked out.
Me too.
So to start, I would like to ask you if you have kind of formative memories about learning about work and labor and kind of the responsibility that fell on you.
Fell on me personally or in my family system? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Well, I had a younger brother, just a couple of years younger. And I definitely remember being told, you do the dishes, and then I would say, why, that's not fair. And then they would say, oh yeah, you're right, it's not fair. And then they couldn't argue with that. And then, that was sort of, we had to both do them together. It's hard to remember. My mother was sick when I was little, so she didn't do much work because she was ill. And my father was working really hard. And so we just, I don't know, we kind of made dinner, went out to dinner. There wasn't really much kind of housework, but definitely he didn't do housework.
Mm-hmm. I wonder how that, because what I'm thinking about your bra line specifically, or your stores, is that bra shopping is not always actually a very woman-friendly thing in the world. And it's often not really, it tends to kind of reinforce stereotypes and beauty standards about women generally.
Well, not since I opened my store.
No, right. So
no, actually it actually was. It was always very women-centered. Women always shopped with the bra lady. And it was always female-centered. You would go and you would talk about your family. You would talk about what's going on with you and your body. It was only with the invention, bringing the department store and the mall and that sort of way of selling this item did it become not something that a woman would want to do. Mm-hmm. This is only in recent times. So what I'm trying to do is to bring back how it was done before. It's as if you would think like supercuts was the only way you ever got your hair cut.
Yeah.
And so when you went into, let's say, because I compare the bra shop a lot to the barber shop, and especially in like the Black community. You go in to get a haircut, but you go in to learn from the other men, and you talk, and it's about telling stories. And that's how bras were always sold. And so it's as if you thought Supercuts was the only way to get you. And then you all of a sudden discovered, a salon. And then, so there is this real disconnect with younger women younger. I'm 60, so I barely remember it. But it's incredible how the experience was all but lost.
Right.
Until almost recently.
Yeah. I mean, my experience, and I'm 30, and I pretty much only wear, sports bras at this point because my boobs were kind of on the smaller side, and I really struggled to find any bra that didn't have padding in it or wasn't designed to be a push-up bra. And that to me, like, completely put me off of bra shopping. But I'm curious where your the origin story of your of Jenette Bras.
Well, I remember, I'm very busty, and the women in my family are, and we're small, but busty. And so definitely all the women, the undergarments were very important. And like I said, I remember being taken to the bra lady, because I developed early, and it was next to a kosher butcher. I remember that. It was Ida's foundation and corset wear.
Oh my God.
Just the thing like a preteen wants to be dragged into, which was, they've been there forever, and they're, places where you'd walk in. They weren't exactly young girl friendly. And so I remember that and thinking, no, I don't want to go there. And that was the dawn of the mall. I just wanted to go where all my friends could go. And, if you're larger busted, you couldn't shop at all those stores with padded this and push up that, nor did you want to.
Yeah.
You were sent to the back of the rack to find some horrible, ugly thing. So yeah, it was bad on both ends of the spectrum. So that was, I have that memory. And then I remember when I was almost 50 when I started this store, and I remember that experience. And then I went to Europe, and I discovered all of these bras that were made in Europe, and I decided to import them, and then just to recreate the experience of a warm, welcoming, fun, happy place, and also that a teenager would love to go to and not be embarrassed, or not terribly embarrassed.
Yeah. Well, I think to frame that in terms of like what we're talking about here, it seems like you have succeeded in lessening the burden of bra shopping for people who otherwise have had trouble finding bras that fit them properly, kind of in the mainstream places that are available.
Yeah, it's definitely, I don't enjoy clothes shopping.
Yeah. Because
I feel, and I'm not, what am I? I'm like a size, it depends on my weight, size 10 to 12, something like that, not plus size, but I kind of dread going into a clothing store because I just like, there's not going to be anything for me. There's going to be like one thing, and then I'm going to try to get, you have this preconceived notion of what it's going to be developed over years. So that's why, many women have developed this dread because of their experience of how it was. And so that is the hardest thing for them to sort of walk in the door and go, actually it's going to be completely the opposite.
Yeah. And to kind of, I would imagine, like, let their guard down a little bit and not carry in that prior experience and kind of the trauma of it, and like change their expectations around.
Yeah. Well, it's difficult to walk in. Not very few women want to kind of like walk in and go to a complete stranger, let me just rip my shirt off and have you, So the fitters are like therapists, and they understand that it's you're a stranger, and there's a relationship, and it's maybe a little uncomfortable, and everybody's level of modesty is different, and that's okay. And it's a slow progress to where you want to go. And it's not all completed in one visit. It does sound like the therapist.
Yeah, like there has to be a relationship established. And I would imagine that Yeah, and the people that work for you probably have like an innate knack to make people feel very comfortable.
Yeah, that's definitely they're when I hire and when I interview, I'm definitely not looking for people who are good at sales.
Sure.
I'm looking for people who are empathetic and good listeners and can read the room and have a good sense of humor. And that's the sort of the person that does the best in this profession.
Yeah. Is that something that you also have found that you're able to teach? Like, is that a honeable skill that you...
It's interesting. You know what? I don't think empathy can be taught. I really don't. It's hard. I mean, you can teach. It's hard because when you know, there is qualities of someone, and then there's abilities. Abilities and skills can be taught to a certain point, but everybody comes with a certain quality to them. And I mean, I have fitters who are very different. I have some who are extroverts and some who are complete introverts. So they have two very different styles, but there is a sort of tuned inness to the other human. They're interested in hearing their story. You can teach people to remind them, maybe when they're a little nervous, first ask this, and do, little kind of guardrails that will move you into it. But no, I don't know. I think you can certainly be taught how to bra fit the actual, I don't think I've hired hardly anyone who's ever been taught how to do that. And actually I prefer it not, but that can be taught because it's engineering and it's no math involved, which is good. So.
No math skills is a prerequisite.
Right, exactly.
In my work, like as an intimacy coordinator, we do, I think that there is sort of a prerequisite, as it sounds, which is similar to your shops, that you kind of have to be emotionally attuned to other people and their body language, and not just what they say, but how they say it, and their eye contact and things like that. And those are all things that I think when the people who train people to do my job are thinking about who's a good fit, they're looking for those qualities already. But there are I think figuring out how to teach that would be like almost a superpower, like if we could kind of share those qualities in a way that it actually seemed like you could learn them and teach them and share them in a way. I think there's probably certain ways that we're able to do that, but I think you're right. For the most part, it's kind of a quality that someone either has or doesn't have.
Yeah.
Do you talk with people in like employees of yours about boundaries in a clear way?
With a fitting?
Yeah.
Well, it all has to do with empathy and listening. It seems also like politeness. If there's a curtain, you say, "May I come in?" I mean, there's certain basic things that like, "May I hook this up for you?" I mean, it's kind of a basic old-fashioned politeness. You just don't grab, So, we have, a curtain. And you say, "Here, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna do that, and then I'm gonna close it, and then I'm gonna come back in and check on you if that's okay." Sometimes, very rarely, you'll get someone who will say, "No, I don't want you. You can't come in." I mean, that's very rare. And then you say, "Okay," and it becomes much harder because we do it with the eye. You fit by the eye and visualizing. But usually, somebody moves. You always say, May I see how this fits? May I do this here? And actually I skew like the old fashioned way, the lady came in and she goes, "Here, look, darling." And then they do that, and I understand why, but I always just say, "Okay, take your hand. I want to teach you how to do it yourself," and put it across here. And if they can't figure it out or feel a little awkward, I would say, "May I?" "Oh, sure." They'll usually invite you. "Oh, you can do it." "Oh, okay. Thank you." So.
Yeah. That's such a beautiful practice in consent. That's such a, I mean, really, that sounds like a a consent class all in and of itself. Just asking the question. I think like we often don't think about consent as asking, like we think about consent as asking for permission, but sometimes I think consent is preparing somebody else's nervous system for what's about to happen. So what you're saying is exactly that. Some of the time it's like explicit consent, but sometimes it's like, I'm going to do this, or I will come back, so that there's no kind of, you remove the shock element.
Well, definitely, because most women who've never gone for a bra fitting, or even if they've never come into our store, they're kind of unsure what is going on. So you say, okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to have you show me your back. And then once I see that, I'm going to go do this. And then I'm going to have you, and you kind of like lay out the template, and then they go, oh, okay, I get it. And that, it helps from both sides, and then they get comfortable. But if there's a certain point, you should always be sensitive. I guess it is kind of like consent, where you're trying to, it's interesting. A lot of it, you're trying to make the woman feel comfortable, but a lot of women put a lot of rules on themselves. Oh no, I can only wear beige. And then you say, oh really? Why? You always ask why. Do you wear white all the time? No, I don't. Well, yeah. And they go, I wonder, you're right. Why can I only? So you ask questions to see if you can move them a little further out of their comfort zone, because what we feel is that like, it's good to move people, but really sensitively. And we do that, but if someone pushes back, we train, you try this, and then if they say, no, I don't like that, I don't like flowers, then you're like, okay, not a problem. Sometimes we say it like you have them show you we use the word, they're crazy, because I'm doing it as sort of self-deprecating, like we're all just crazy. We have this point where we're just crazy.
Right.
And you get to that point where they show you, someone says like, oh God, I wish this bra could help with my stomach. And then you go like, well, I got a full body bra. Would you like, and they laugh and they go, you're right. It's just, okay, I get it. So if they laugh and say, you're right.
Right.
But if you sense a bit of, I don't even want to think about that, then you just go, okay, that's not a problem. You have to be sensitive when they also don't want to step forward.
Right.
And they're not ready for it.
Yeah, that's making me think of, it sounds to me like you're empowering people to question their own, like the fact that they're not giving themselves permission to do something.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to ask them why. And I always ask why. Because it's interesting. And it's for me to learn. Like I'll ask so many women I'm fascinated who've never gone into a bra store. And let's say they're larger busted, so to a bra fitting. If you're smaller, it's not that necessary if you don't want to. But and I always say, oh, that's interesting. How come? I don't have the time. And so what do you do with your day? Oh, I run my kids to here, and I run my, and I don't spend money on myself. I said, do you spend money on your hair? No, I really don't. I cut it myself. Oh, that's interesting. You do. So what do you spend money? On my children, on their education.
Right.
And then I think about, okay, so this is not important to her. She has no value, and that's fine, but she values her daughter's education. So I was thinking about, well, when her daughter becomes 13, 14, there's such a lack of education for young girls about their bodies, and especially their breasts. So I started talking about education of her daughters. And I guess, it's funny. I think probably the best salespeople are the people who listen and are interested, but you want it to be an authentic way. You want to I want to find something of what I do that is of value to her. Right. And if there is nothing, then that's fine.
Today's episode is brought to you by me. I teach boundary and consent classes on Zoom on a sliding scale. These offer a framework for us to practice the language of consent and find and communicate our own boundaries. I also do one-on-one sessions privately. I'll let Euphomia share her experience with you.
Doing boundaries and consent work with Mia has been one of the most transformational experiences of my life. I remember when I began this work with her earlier this year, I was terrified. I didn't really know what to expect and was scared that I was going to make a fool of myself. And I'm so glad that I went, because it's nothing like that. One of the most powerful things Mia ever said to me was that doing this work gives you the ability to understand yourself and to then give the gift to others to not cross your boundary. And it's been so rewarding and so amazing, and I've literally recommended her to everyone I know. She's a remarkable person, and the work is so individualized that I truly believe that everyone can get something out of it.
Thank you, Euphomia, for that incredible recommendation. You can find the forms to register for class or book a private session through the link in my bio on Instagram at Mia Schachter. And on with the show. What you're getting at a little bit is like these ideas that we have around luxury and lack and kind of scarcity, and like giving ourselves permission to indulge sometimes is so difficult, especially I think for parents. I'm not a parent, but I know I see this in my mother too, that there's a something of a societally prescribed like self-deprivation sometimes for mothers, that luxury is not something that you're allowed to have. And sometimes luxury is, I mean, bras can be expensive, but sometimes it sounds like at your stores, they're really, what people are paying for is this experience. They're paying for the attention and the like the generosity and the, as you said, like some of your sales people are more like therapists, that that it's the first time that some of these women are coming in and really being seen. And then they're also being allowed to give themselves permission to kind of explore a little bit out of their comfort zone.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I do find, having seen so many women over the years, and a great many of them are brought in by their partners. And it is almost the partner who's the one who says, if you like the three of them, then get them all.
Right.
No. It's always that, and if you want to, gender it, I mean, the men, I mean, I rarely have one that doesn't say, she's so beautiful, I just wish she would take care of herself more. I see her as she doesn't, and they bring her in. Almost all the time they'll say, yeah, it was my husband. He saw it, and I was like, no, I don't need this kind of thing. So women, they don't want to give themselves permission.
It's interesting that permission almost more often comes externally, that like it's hard for us to give ourselves permission to indulge. But if someone else gives, I mean, I'm even thinking of like, I don't know that my mom would have gone and bought herself bras at your store, but she was willing to do that for my sister.
Oh, I see.
You can, luxury is something that we're comfortable gifting to other people, but not gifting to ourselves a lot of the time.
That is true.
I'm also really interested in this thing that you were talking about kind of helping, maybe not push people out of their comfort zone, but like guiding them to explore outside of their comfort zone. In my work, I've kind of developed this this thing that I call the yes to no spectrum. And in the middle, there's maybe. And on the no side of maybe is where you might feel unsafe, like where you really don't want to, you don't want to talk yourself out of a no. You don't want to justify a no. You don't want to think to yourself, if I don't do something, then this bad thing will happen. Like that's all on the no side. But on the yes side, you have things like pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, a challenge, like learning something new about yourself. And that all falls under the umbrella of uncomfortable. So sometimes uncomfortable is where we really learn a lot about ourselves and try new things. And
always.
Like growth is uncomfortable, change is uncomfortable. But I try to kind of reinforce that, if you have a maybe that is more of a curiosity with a little bit of nervousness, that can become a yes. So like maybe for some people, floral is uncomfortable, but not unsafe.
Yeah, I think, you can only really take a risk if you feel safe. I mean, that's a concept with acting. You know, you
Yes.
feel safe with your partner. You feel to try something to go beyond your comfort zone. And that's where, you know, you learn, and the dangerous things, you try things out, but you have to feel safe with your surroundings and with the person you're with.
Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think when I'm talking to actors, because I teach boundary and consent classes to actors,
Mm-hmm.
and when we talk about this kind of yes to no spectrum idea, it's really about, like, you know, the environment that you're in can help you feel safe even when you're uncomfortable. And that so often with acting in particular, feeling uncomfortable is part of the process. And like feeling, you know, a lot of times actors want to push themselves and try new things and try things that are scary. But being able to differentiate really in your body, like in an embodied way, being able to differentiate between the feeling of unsafe and the feeling of uncomfortable sometimes can be really, really tricky. Like that can be a little bit nebulous. And especially when there's the pressure of, like, you know, you're on a time schedule and the director wants you to do something.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It can just get harder to kind of feel into that. Like, you know, feeling into that can take time.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's very different from the fitting room being on the set. Yeah.
Well, but now I'm suddenly wondering, like, where do you see overlap in acting and what you do in the film?
I see a lot of overlap. I mean, especially with the type of person that I think is good at bra fitting. I think actors are very good. The only problem is they have a boss that supersedes me. And that is always the problem, you know, the audition. But the reason I say they're good, I find that actors and bartenders can also be very, very good, because they have a skill. They're able to do a lot of different things and keep a lot of concepts in their head, because while a bra fitter is talking with you, and she's also going through in the mind all the stock that she has and all the sizes and all the bands and the cups and listening and yet doing other things, like a bartender would.
Yeah.
They're there, they're in the moment with you, and yet they're also busy. They're also doing something. An actor is the same thing. You have to be in the moment and listening and improvising. And yet, of course, you have your lines and I find those people who can be very good bartenders, the kind that can talk to you, and actors make really wonderful bra fitters as well.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And everything you were talking about the kind of the emotional attunement that your fitters have, where they build a relationship and they're listening and they're being present with the person and they're gauging their comfort and doing all those like emotional processes all at once.
Right.
But I think the main thing that you keep coming back to is the listening aspect. And actors are the best of listeners. You know, I think actors get a bad rap for being like fake and lying and untrustworthy and all this stuff. And anytime anyone has ever said that to me, I think you're completely misunderstanding what acting is. Like, acting is just about honesty, being present in the moment, reacting from an honest place. I mean, I think that like really excellent actors probably have the hardest time lying, because they're always trying to get at the truth. It makes perfect sense that actors are good.
Well, the best liars believe their lies. So.
Well, yes, there's that too. That too. Right. So I'm wondering, as a parent, how this kind of like what we've been talking about well, all of these things, kind of the permission aspect, the luxury aspect, the learning about yourself and getting pushed out of your comfort zone, how this has sort of presented itself in your parenting.
Interesting. Well, I have 3 boys and 1 girl. The girl is the youngest, and everyone is different. You're born. I mean, all my children, except for one of them, I'm a foster mother, so I wasn't there at his birth. But the others, I was there at their birth, and they come out the way their personalities, the qualities are intact from the minute that they're born. It's very strange. Yeah. Till they grow up, and they just engage with the world. And so my daughter has always been someone who's had amazing boundaries. Absolute. Like, no, one of her first words is no touch, no touch.
Wow.
She does not like people. She doesn't like people touching her. She's very stiff when you hold her. She was quite, she's just very, very rule-based. She knows herself. She knows her boundaries. She doesn't take any crap from anyone. I mean, that's always been her. And so it's interesting. She is very comfortable with her body, more so than I was, as far as talking about it, especially in front of her father. It's a different, she just loves using the word vagina, vagina, vagina all the time. I think she likes to see his cheeks go red or whatever, just using those words. And very different from how I was, and very different how my mother was. It's interesting how, you're raised by your mother. But where am I going with this? It's funny because my daughter's actually an A cup. Mm-hmm. So she's a different, but she actually, she sees the value of spending. I don't like to use the word luxury. It's interesting that you use the word luxury, and the word splurge usually goes with luxury.
Yeah.
Right? Women say they're going to splurge. So one of my sort of triggers when I hear women talk about themselves and in regards to buying their undergarments is when they see how much a very well-made bra costs. Yeah. They're kind of shocked, and that's fine, because it's, again, the idea of like, if only there were Payless shoes, and you go like, how could a shoe cost more than $12? I don't understand it. So there's that. But when you say, okay, so this bra is about $175 or something like that, and they'll say, I'll splurge. Now, the word splurge, it seems sort of innocent. However, a man would never say that going to buy a suit for a job interview, to buy goods. He would never say, I'm just going to splurge on a suit. Right. He would say, this is how much this costs, and I need it. And I need it, and it's worth it. Yeah. And this is well made, and I was like, wow, that word is really, it's interesting. We say that to ourselves, that when we're buying something that really is of value, and I'm splurging as if we're not worth it. Right. Even something that is important to us, because maybe we only see it, is not important. Or nobody can see it. That's always a big thing. Why should I spend so much money when no one? And I say, well, you can. Yeah. My God, when you get dressed, or you take off your shirt, do you want to depress yourself when you take? I mean, that's it. Or the idea of like, oh, just every day. And then I say, oh, so what does every day mean to you? And you unpack it, and it's like, every day is, I don't need to feel good. And I only do things on a special day, and then sometimes it's only for another person. Right. And there's nothing wrong with doing something for another person, but if you just say, it's just every day. And I always ask, what does that mean to you? They'll say, oh, I'm running after kids and I'm doing okay, so you need to be more comfortable, you're leaning over. But if they say, oh, just I don't know, something for me, and it doesn't matter what I look like. It can be very blah. Yeah. So it's like, it can be comfortable. It doesn't have to be blah. You know what I mean? You can be happy, every day. Why don't you feel to make yourself feel good? And then they say, you're right. You're absolutely right. I didn't realize that. And then you'll sort of see why. They'll start talking like a therapist. That's so interesting. My mother used to always say, why are you wearing that? Why don't you save that? You shouldn't waste. Why are you wasting that? On yourself. Waste it on yourself. It's really interesting. So then people start thinking, oh, that's really interesting. My mother never took care of herself. So I felt, and it's just, the stories are really, really fascinating. Yeah. And especially with something like a good fitting bra. And especially if you're a bustier person, like, it's not just what it looks like. It's going to change your posture. It's going to make you feel, it's going to help keep you from spending more energy throughout the day. You're going to feel less tired. You're like, that's huge. That's not just like, it doesn't need to look pretty for me. Yeah. And also very much so with fuller busted women, we were over-sexualized as young girls. Most of us developed early, some not. You're over-sexualized as a young girl. So you have all of that. And then when something's not fitting right, and usually you're coming out of it. You get a lot of, you're over-sexualized in the workplace, or, you know, things don't fit right. So a lot of wearing something that fits you, finally, you feel like, oh, you know, I have control over my body. It doesn't have control over me. Or, you know, if I choose to wear a lot of cleavage, it will be my choice.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's huge. It's the choice component. Like completely, I think that's exactly what it is.
It's the agency.
Right, the agency. I think also, though, like the cost of a good bra, especially for, you know, like I can wear a sports bra that's $18 and that's fine. But I think about, you know, especially like how much more expensive it is to be a woman in this world, like from the cost of bras to tampons, pads, you know, like all, even things that are just made pink and called for women are more expensive when they're the same product as like the one for men. And it just makes me, I often think that like the government really ought to be subsidizing like women's products. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
A nice white blouse, a pair of opaque tights, and tampons and a good bra. Yeah, there you go. Exactly. We need that subsidy, because it is unreasonably more expensive to be a woman. It's true. Haircuts. That's the
haircuts.
The difference between a male haircut and a female haircut. Yeah.
Right. Which is also outrageous, because I think that typically a woman's haircut actually takes less time.
Cutting men's hair is really difficult. It's really,
right.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, because you're dealing with this instead of around a head, instead of what's typically for women like a lot more of a linear cut.
Yeah.
I was also thinking about this word splurge as like this nail-biting, guilt-inducing thing that we do, instead of, as you were saying, with like a man who has to buy a suit for his work, he would be like, this is part of my job. You know, this is a business expense, and it's an investment in how I'm perceived, and that's
right. An investment.
Right.
An enjoyment. It takes the enjoyment, the aspect of enjoyment or considered. You're not considering. You're just like, oh, I'm just a flighty, you know, girl who's just going to spend her money on, you know, baubles. And it's really infantilizing. It's really
completely. And it's also reinforcing this idea that we exist for other people and for the consumption of other people. Like this bra that I'm going to buy for myself is really only worth it if it's for somebody else and not for me.
Yeah, we get that a lot. I mean, that's a great thing to change, is when a woman comes in and she's like, you know, you're right. This is for me, you know. And there's a real change. And there's also it's so interesting. It's so funny. I love speaking with men. I don't get I love boys. I've got boys and men anyway. But I'll have a man come up to me in a market one time. And he was like, oh, hi. He said, you know, my wife shops at your store. And I was like, oh, that's nice. And then he would say, thank you. You know, she's like happy. She feels good. I love it when she goes to your store. She feels good about herself. And, you know, that sort of coming from the other person, it's really nice that it was a change. You know, I never say like I'm trying to change their life. I'm just trying to change their underwear. But I prefer it to come from them. But the idea of like, you know, you're right. I was always kind of not treating myself well, and it shows. And it's nice when their partner also says, you know,
if it changes her demeanor and her confidence and how she feels about herself, that's everything. And that is on the outside, you know, that is like, it's not just under your t-shirt.
Oh yeah. We always say just because you can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't show.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it does. I mean, absolutely. Yeah.
So in wrapping up, I would love to ask you about your particular influences. If you could offer 3 influences, whether those are people or books, movies, experiences that you've had, 3 things that have kind of been formative for you and brought you to this moment in your life.
Wow. Well, what comes to mind is my grandmother. My grandmother Bernie, my paternal grandmother, and she was a very, very strong woman. She worked in my grandfather's deli. She was the lady behind the cashier, and she was just she raised us, she took care of us. She was just loud and proud. And it was so funny. It was always acknowledged that she wasn't a very good looking woman. That didn't matter. No, but it wasn't like, it was like, who cares? It's, it's like pretty as pretty does. That was always what was said. It was like, well, what have you done? What do you do? It wasn't about, something you were born with. I mean, you looked attractive, but this idea of like beauty confers upon you some magical power was just, it was like, that's for other people. I don't know. So I love my grandmother, and she was a big influence on me. What else? It's so funny. I don't know why it just popped into my mind. I love the movie Gloria.
Okay.
John Cassavetes.
Cool.
I love Gina Rowlands. Again, she was just like this character, the strong woman character in film that I had never seen. I'm trying to think. I mean, I used to always pretend I was a little boy when I was a girl.
Mm-hmm.
I was always play acting I was a boy. Always. And it just made perfect sense to me because they did the coolest stuff.
Right.
So I was always looking for sort of strong female characters. And so I love that movie. I thought she was great. She was a mom, and she was tough, and she was a gangster. And God, what else? My acting teacher in high school, I had an amazing acting teacher named Mr. Engel. He's a pretty famous individual. And he was incredible. He treated us like everyone, like adults. We were 14, and it was like, you have to train, you have to work. I don't care what happened in the school in math and algebra. You walk in the door of the theater class and you leave it behind, and we get to work. And it was my absolute saving. It was my safe place. Was the drama class, and it was definitely due to him.
Cool. Yeah, talking to you about acting is just kind of bringing back a whole lot of stuff for me. And, specifically this idea that we're kind of circulating around therapy and these times where you can go and kind of leave the world behind. That's what I think acting is. And it sounds like that's also a lot of what people get out of going to your store.
Yeah, it's definitely being able to talk to one person, and leave the world behind. It's hard. I mean, it's necessary. I find acting. I haven't acted since I opened the stores. Not really.
Oh.
And I used to love going, like when I was in a play, to leave the world behind and just to concentrate on one thing and become a different person for those 2 hours. And that was really, really amazing. I love doing that.
Yeah. And Jeanette, can you share where people can find you online?
Oh, the store is at JenetteBras.com. And you can also find me on Instagram at JenetteBras_LA.
I'm on Instagram at Mia Schachter, SCHACHTER, and you can follow the podcast at Share the Load Podcast. Special thanks to Pete Ziarto at Director Pete on Instagram for recording, editing, and producing help, and to Tyler Fjeld for the music. You can reach me at podcast@sharetheloadinc.com with questions or comments. If you find these episodes enriching or educational, please consider becoming a member at patreon.com/sharetheload. Well, thank you, Jeanette. This was really lovely. It was really nice to talk to you.
Yeah, you too. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.